Welcome back. I'm Crispy, and this is another unsolicited advice video. I've got my hot drink in hand. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. I've got some nice jazz playing. Always puts me in a good mood. Really does. Gotta tell you, I really am enjoying taking a look at these games that are posted publicly. So I want to thank all of the creators that I've taken a look at so far. You know, I may not 100% agree with all of your practices, but good on you for taking the risk and putting it out there publicly so people can see the hobby in action. And I think that's a very laudable thing. I wish more people would put their games online. I'd be happy to take a look at them and maybe give some feedback that they didn't ask for. They don't want. And in some cases, you know, that's fine too. Because the reason I'm doing this is because I think good games can be great, and games that struggle a little bit might just need to tweak a few things here and there. Try something new to improve the experience for all of the participants. So that's what we're going to do. Always appreciate your comments too. Well, most of them. We're going to take a look at a game from a creator. And you know what this is? I have to say, as much as I enjoy sometimes having a bit of a shout down the well, so to speak, it's good of creators out there to take the risk and show their gaming chops. It's one thing to write a game. That's a talent. I don't have that talent. Some of you think I have no talent, and that's okay too. But to not only create the product and put it out there for consumption, but then to show you using the product, that's excellent. So nothing but respect from me. Notwithstanding, I'm going to give you some advice you didn't ask for. We're going to take a look at a creator by the name of Kelsey Dionne. Now, Kelsey, a couple years back. Now, Kelsey's been in the industry for a long time, so I don't want to say, oh well, 2 years back she just exploded onto the scene. No, she's been involved in the hobby for a very long time, and she created a product, a game 2 years ago called Shadowdark, and it's we'll call it an OSR adjacent game. It's got some modern mechanics in it, but it has that deadly feel that the OSR often has. I'm not a huge OSR guy. I've played some OSR games and enjoyed them for what they were. But Kelsey had the Kickstarter for Shadowdark around this time, actually. If memory serves, well, and I'm looking at it here, it launched on Kickstarter on February 28th, 2 years ago. And immense success. Fantastic success. Good for her. I mean, that's awesome. It just exploded. Some good timing, excellent marketing, beautiful artwork in the book. That was, I think, her significant other, her wife, Jessie, was instrumental in putting that together. I think she has a publishing background. Could be wrong on that. That's neither here nor there. And she's got a new Kickstarter out, folks. And it's done huge numbers so far. Huge numbers. Again, that's fantastic. I think that's a sign of people still enjoying the tabletop role-playing hobby as I do. And that can't help but be a good thing. I think that's a wonderful thing. So good for you, Kelsey. We're going to take a look at a game that you posted a couple years ago, accompanying the launch of your we'll call it flagship product, the Shadowdark. And this is a game where Kelsey, you're teaching the rules to some of the players. And so that goes without saying that there's going to be a little more explanation on the meta. And that's fine. We're going to not watch the whole thing, but we'll watch a good segment of it. And again, I'm looking at this as with the idea of what little things could we change in order to improve the in-character experience of all the participants. So here we are. I'll just briefly, as I try to do now, go through the participants. We have Kelsey over here on the left, nearest to my head. And then right next to her is Lauren, followed by Doc, Jesse, and then finally David. Here we go.
Devoured.
Still hungry.
Thankfully, no. You ate something and it seemed to have worked.
Okay. What do I see if I look directly west?
Ooh, good question. So I'm going to reveal to you guys.
So I have this weird thing, Kelsey. I acknowledge it's weird, but I think there's ways to stay in character and still get that information of what's around me. In this case, what I would have suggested Doc say, and it takes a little bit of practice, but it's not hard, is instead of saying, what do I see if I look west, which is out of character, would be something more along the lines of, I look west. Then that's a cue that you can give him the information of what lies to the west, rather than, can you tell me what is into the west? Who are you talking to? You're obviously going to have to provide the player with the description that you're going to give here in just a second. But you can get that information and still be in character. I look to the west. I turn my head, I look to the west. That to me is more staying immersed in that character.
A room here. You see, and perhaps should have shown you this sooner, you see a wide room that is crumbling into the ocean. It looks like it has a pair of double doors. And you're hearing the hollow crash of the sea up against the marble floors here. And it's smeared with seaweed and grime that has appeared to wash up. And you see that there are 6 gold-flecked pillars that are kind of teetering and drunkenly holding up the ceiling here. And then there are soiled curtains of purple silk that are hanging in rags over an archway that's to the north. So if you can kind of see, I don't know actually if you can see where I'm circling when I do this right here. Can you see my mouse moving on the screen? So there's like a ragged silk hanging right here that looks like it was once maybe like a door curtain. Mm-hmm. So knowing that, what do you do?
Okay. So my suggestion here, Kelsey, would be to give the description. Myself, the way I describe things to players, or I try to describe, I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but I try to emphasize player agency. And the way I do that personally is I limit how many times I say the word you. So I know that sounds super weird, but it helps me it's just a reminder for me that the player should be acting as the character, moving the character around and deciding what they feel about things and as the character, trying to get into that headspace of the character.
Well, my good compatriot here was part of the minor guild and, did okay where I have expertise. And truly the thing that I know more than any is the looting of rich people's places. And I tell you, if my name's not Wibbly Sticky Wicket, by praise Memnon, whom I follow directly, there's definitely something hiding behind that silk tapestry.
Okay. Doc, are you thinking this? Is this all an internal monologue, or do you say it out loud? I think it's better to say it out loud. Say it out loud as the character is what I'm talking about.
So someone should go check that out.
Not it.
I mean,
So
the
are you
halfling, so brave before. Surely the halfling would be interested in seeing what's behind the door.
We know it
I like David's character a lot. David's the guy on the far right.
has to be one of us because tall people simply lack the courage to do anything.
Yes.
At all.
Oh, thank you for complimenting me as being tall. That is very nice of you. You are a good man. I like you.
The man?
man.
Huh? Hey, this is a figure of speech. I know you are goblins.
What
Well,
makes
so it
goblins?
sounds like our crew, our goblin crew, and Ernatho are sort of hanging back right now, looking at this curtain suspiciously. And it once again falls on Grumby. Grumby, are you going to do anything to investigate?
He's really worried.
One of the things I recommend for better games, more immersive games, is to try to avoid asking out of character questions, and that applies, Kelsey, to both us as the game masters as well as players. So what you're doing here with the, and to be fair, Kelsey, I understand Jessie is not experienced as a player. She's involved in the business, but more on the production side rather than on the participant side of the hobby. So this is something, though, that can be trained very quickly. And the idea here is, as soon as I stop talking, it's someone's turn. And we're in initiative order. So and I like that about this game, is that you start the game, the entire game is done in initiative. And the advantage of that is that you're always knowing, you always know when my turn is. So right after Doc says something, Jessie, you know it's your turn. You just immediately can do something without having to be prompted by the game master. She's got a lot of other things on her plate. She doesn't need to prompt the players. Players they don't need that kind of coddling. At first they might, because they're so used to that prompting, but it's not necessary to prompt so much.
But he wants to impress the friends, so he's gonna go for it.
Ooh, so you're gonna move up. You move up to the curtain, and you see as you get closer, it's definitely hanging over some kind of open archway. But what's beyond it, you can't quite see. You would have to move the curtain aside. Do you want to do that?
Okay. This is very common, Kelsey. I've lost track how many times I've done this. Do you want to do that? Do you want to look in there? Do you? If the player does not say that their character does it, then they just stand there until they get used to the idea that, okay, if I'm interacting with this fictional world as the character, I have to say it. And I don't wait as a crutch for the dungeon master, game master, referee, whatever, of asking me these things. It's just too passive.
Can I look under the curtain?
Okay, can I look under the curtain is different than I crouch down and peek under the frayed ends of the curtain. One is asking a what if question. So would it be possible for me to do that? A better way of framing this, Kelsey, is to help train the players to think, if I want to attempt something, then I have to, just as in the real world, you wouldn't ask the sky if you could peek underneath the curtain. You would look underneath the curtain. Is there any, and then you can say light spills out from underneath, or a sliver of space provides visibility beyond, instead of can I, before she's actually done it. Does that make sense?
That's a good idea. Yes, you can. So you scooch down.
This was the hardest thing for me to break. I just naturally, you could go way back on my channel, see some of my very, very first games that I post, and you'll hear me saying things like, awesome, excellent, great, fantastic. And it all comes from a good place, right? It all comes from this idea of I'm supportive, I'm encouraging. The problem is that it can become, it's all out of character, and I'm trying to stay in character too. And you think, what, out of character? I'm like, well, sure, because who's saying awesome? Well, it's me as another participant in the game saying, I love that move you did there. Save all of that, which is important to have, but I think it's better placed after the game session's over. Say, when you did this, that was fantastic. Make note of it. You can talk about it afterwards. Everyone will have something that stood out to them. But if it's done in the moment, on the turn, every turn, as I've noticed happens in this game session, it does a few things. It slows everything down, and it pulls out of that immersion, that immersive experience that I personally would encourage everyone to try.
Down very halfling style and look underneath the curtain, and I'm gonna show you kind of what you see in the room beyond. You see, as you glance around, actually let me kind of get rid of this weird little artifact right here. Oh no, not that. You see in the room beyond, let's see, I'm gonna put you here, Grumby. You peek in, and before you is another open room that's sort of splashed with seaweed and detritus from the ocean. But as you kind of turn and look to the left, you see that there is an alcove.
I love the word detritus. I do. I love it.
And in that alcove, there's a thin, twisted tree with black branches that's bursting up out of a plot of earth. And you see hanging from the branches these...
So instead of just saying, you see, that excellent description of the black twisted branches from a pot of earth, just describe also there. It's a taste. It's just a personal taste, Kelsey, but I think it's more concise, unlike this video, but it's concise. And being concise helps players build that mind map, build that picture in their head.
These red, juicy globes of fruit that are almost glistening with their richness. And it's just hanging off of the tree, these dozens of globes.
What do you got over there?
Do you tell your friends what you see?
Okay, she's Jesse's brand new, so this is it could be a little weird the first time another player talks to you in character. So I understand it can be a little unusual, especially if you're trying everyone to be in character for the game session. That can be exceptionally challenging, especially for new people. But it becomes second nature very quickly, and that initial awkwardness doesn't last.
See?
Yeah. So I inform you guys what's going on, and I decide I want to get closer.
Mm-hmm.
But how I want to do this, I kind of want to move very close to the walls so nobody can see me if somebody's in there. So I'm very close to the walls, and I kind of get over to the tree to get a closer look that way.
Perfect. So what we can do to represent that is let's have you make a dexterity check to see how successfully you sneak. So this is going to be rolling your 20-sided die. No problem. You take your 20-sided die, the one with the most sides. Perfect.
Right.
You're going to roll it,
okay,
and then add your dexterity modifier, which is +3.
Okay.
To your number.
14 plus 3.
So that's a 17. That's really good. That's really good. So I would say, Grumby, that you successfully creep your way along the wall towards this tree without causing any disturbance that you're aware of. So I'm going to put you by that tree. And then I think it is time for us to get an action from Ernatho. We haven't had one from you in a minute.
So at the beginning, you rolled initiative and put them in this initiative order. And that took a little bit of time, not a lot of time. But since that's happened, it should just be automatic. As soon as Jessie is finished describing what she's doing in this brief moment of time, or her character is doing, Grumby. So what Grumby does in that brief moment, her turn, then immediately David's ready to go, without waiting for you to prompt him.
A minute. I'll jump us back into our initiative order. So we'll go to Ornatho. I'm next, and then after that we'll come back to Lauren. So David, what does Ernatho do?
Ernatho is exploring. He's interested in this place. He's fascinated. His attention is focused on just analyzing everything. And the doorway to the south here, he wants to move toward it and just poke his head through, look through.
Cool. And I'll show you then what you see after looking through that door. The room becomes clear to you. There's another wide room that connects out to the sea and is crashing and crumbling into the sea. But this looks like a room that is housing a bunch of old instruments. So you see this like patina-caked pipe organ that's resting against the wall just on this side inside the door. And then over on this side, there's like a pile of old viols and cellos that have snap strings and they're, water damaged and they're just shoved up against the wall. And anytime the sea breeze kind of rises as you're listening inside this room, you hear just the faint sort of harmonic echoing of instruments.
Fantastic. Ernatho is even more intrigued and enters the room. And you mentioned the pipe organ?
Mm-hmm.
Ernatho would like to go up to the pipe organ.
So David, my suggestion for you is to just describe what as if others are seeing this happen in first person. I walk in. You are Ernatho. And by the way, I may have already mentioned it, but I really like how David plays this character. It's interesting. I like it. Back to my point. My point, David, is that I, rather than saying this, I would like to do this, would like to do that, just describe what he does. I walk into the room. I look around. Kelsey gives her description, including the sound of the sea breeze going through instruments that all off into the corner. And then you, after that description, I look over at the pipe organ. I walk to the pipe organ, sit down. That's great. It's not what I liked. I would like to just move there. If Kelsey needs to interrupt, she can interrupt. It doesn't change that. But there's a lot of, I'd like to do this, or can I do this? Or in the case of the description, it's kind of like this, it's sort of like that. Just describe what he sees. It might be, the question sometimes comes up, well, what if he doesn't recognize what's there? Or what if it appears this way on a superficial examination, but in fact it's different? You just maybe explain to the players that my narration to you is when you say you look west, or when you say you look into the room, I give your perception of it. Sometimes I'll call for a roll, a perception check or something. And then I will give you that, depending on what you see. But I'm going to describe it as if it's a fact, because for you, it is a fact. If someone else comes in, they might see something else. That's okay. Rather than saying seems like, kind of like, sort of like.
And, just dust off the keys and play a little ditty.
Nice. So although the pipes look like they've been rusted and they're covered in that sort of greenish,
I think it's called verdigris.
Rust that attaches itself to brass. When you touch the keys, you hear this wheezing bellow as it comes to life and this honking sound as a tuneless noise comes out of it. You feel a little bit of resistance on the keys. Are you going to try to push through?
You're asking him a question, Kelsey. I'd get away from doing that. He can describe if he's playing. If he's playing and it triggers something, then it triggers something.
The resistance, or do you leave it?
Does everyone understand what I just said there? Here, let's just watch it again. No, go back.
You feel a little bit of resistance on the keys. Are you going to try to push through the resistance, or do you leave it?
Okay. So Kelsey, that moment where the keys resist, just leave it at that. Then David, do I keep trying? He has to decide at that moment without being cued. You can interrupt the action like you've done, which is great. But I don't think it's necessary to cue.
It's just, yeah. It's, of course, it's rusted, so it's an old organ. You know, just, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you get a beautiful chord in. And a pearl pops out of one of the pipes. This like old kind of seaweed covered pearl, boom, and it clatters to the ground next to you. At the same time that you hear this loud honking sound that reverberates throughout this entire complex. Everybody, including Grumby up to the north, hears this tuneless honk. Which means as the game master, I'm going to quickly check for a random encounter.
Oh.
Now, Kelsey is teaching them the game. I would assume that experienced participants would not need the dungeon master to cue that. They would just, something in the background, it would be happening. But she's trying to show people this is how the game is designed and this is what sort of thing. So it's a bit of a tutorial.
You are safe for now, but now you see a pearl rolling around at your feet.
And I yell back to everyone, "It is okay!"
Fuck with that.
Just as loudly as the organ, you hear it is okay.
It is okay!
I like how David plays. I do.
Digestion problems again.
The island has rewarded my beautiful music. It is okay. And I bend down and I look at the pearl.
Okay, that's great. Did you notice that? He didn't say I would like to bend down and look at the pearl. He says I bend down and look at the pearl in present tense. Once you get the habit of it, it really isn't hard, and it works so well.
Pluck it.
It seems.
And he picks it up. Great. I pluck it. I look at it. It's a pearl.
Like quite a nice pearl. Very sizable. Everybody gains an experience point as you guys claim another piece of treasure from this haunted place.
Excellent.
This very place just keeps offending me on principle. First, it's a waste of water. Then it's an offense to music anywhere. Do tall people not know what music sounds like?
All right, Lauren, I appreciate you're saying this in character, and I like that, and I like your voice that you're using. But according to the initiative order, it's not your turn at the moment. It's Kelsey's turn. And the game master does need to be in that initiative order in case there's something else that happens. I mean, they just announced Ernatho has played a chord on an out-of-tune, old, weathered pipe organ. Something might happen because of that. So I like what you've done. It's just that it would have been better to wait, because my understanding is that it was the game master's turn at that point.
I should have heard.
Possibly not. And I think we'll come to my turn as the game master. I'm doing a couple little game mastery things in the background here. Ernatho, as you're looking at the pearl, you start to feel a coldness come over the room. And then we're going to jump back to Bazarak. Lauren! So you're in the main hall, and now your friends are dividing off into separate rooms, splitting the party like one does.
I'm with
What
you.
do you do?
That's not a good thing to do. But you know what? Tall person's doing a lot of noise.
Yep.
The tall person is going to attract the most danger. So
let's
I'm going to
there.
go into the exact opposite direction of that. I'm going to join the other smaller person, or other, actual normal-sized person around here.
Okay. This is something that perhaps you have to decide at the beginning of the game. Are we going to be talking about what the character's thinking? I'm not a huge fan of it. I suppose if everyone understands, that's what we're going to do. I prefer focusing on what's observable. So he could announce this to Doc, who's right next to him. Doc's character, Wibbly, I think is the character's name. he could just announce that, and then he does his action rather than giving the justification for the action. It's just a lot slower, and some people, that's what they want. They want to be able to decide in a game where it's just two, so the game master and a player, then I think it works better that they can say what the player can say what the character is thinking. But when you have more participants, like you have 4 players, it can become confusing. Did he say that out loud, or is he just thinking that?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop a halfling. I'm gonna go into that room, careful like. I'm gonna see the tree, suspicious like.
I'm going to, or just do it.
But them trees, them tree fruits. I am curious. I've eaten rats on that ship for days. I need something different. So I'm gonna pull out my short bow, which I have. I'm gonna pull out an arrow, which I also have. I'm gonna try and shoot down one of those fruits. Wilhelm Tell like. Gonna do it fancy.
Beautiful. So I'd say just an attack roll with your sharp bow. Let's put it at an AC 12. A decent shot, but one that you could make.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, I'll take it. It's 10 plus 3. That's a 13.
Nice. Easy enough. You sever with your arrow one of the little branches holding one, and this fruit plops down onto the ground and kind of rolls slightly towards you. And it's got a beautiful glisten to it, like an orange in the morning on a fine summer day.
I'm gonna take it. Look at it. Eat it. Hey.
I consider this a little bit of turn inflation. When we're not in a combat, the players could take cues on how long each turn is based on what they're doing. But the problem is that if one player starts to do many, many, many things, then it breaks down. Now, I'm not sure I have the perfect solution for this, Kelsey, but there's the best advice, unsolicited advice I could give here would simply be to try to impress upon players to keep their turns short. Maybe 2 sentences rather than a whole bunch of things. You could even say, well, your turn is, in most cases, it should be as long as it takes to say it. And that's what you're doing. You walk into the room. Next. And the advantage of having a short turn, you might think, well, it's too choppy. But it isn't if everyone abides by that same expectation that the turns are short, because then you know your turn's coming up really quick again. And then you can just continue. And because the elapsed time between turns is much less, it's easier to remember what everyone's doing. Instead of, wow, it was 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago. What was I doing again? Oh, I was sneaking up to the tree trying to avoid being seen. And you were still doing that when this guy walked across that hallway and in, and then took out his bow, and took out the arrow, and then noticed the tree, first, and then shoots the branch holding the fruit. Well, what's going on with the other? You see what I mean? Like that's a number of activities. It perhaps would have been better for the player here to shorten it up. Just take one of those things, and then it goes to the next player, and they just do one thing. And I know this sounds like, oh, it's going to be so long, but it's not, because it can go very quickly. What does slow things down is if it's a lot of back and forth between the game master and the player on their turn. A lot of it. I'm doing this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And in between each of those statements, there's an expectation that you are going to provide more information to the player as needed.
Hey, Webley, want a bite?
You're asking Grumpy if he wants a bite?
Oh,
No,
sorry.
I'm asking.
Yeah, I do.
I'm
Oh,
asking
you're
Whitley.
asking Wibbly. I misheard you. Wibbly's in the other room, and it is Wibbly's turn. So
Uh,
Hey, Whitley, you want a bite?
I'm a true believer in randomness, so hang on.
good.
Well, I was gonna go.
There is a case to be made, Doc, that randomness is an essential component of the game, and it does have an additive effect. However, I'm not personally one that thinks that a well-embodied character is one that's going to simply let the dice decide on everything. You don't have to. I can understand why you may say this, Doc, and I'm just imagining. You haven't explained your rationale, and that's fine. I'm just not convinced that a believable character, as embodied by that player, would be one that doesn't have a motivation already. Perhaps the time to roll dice is when you're creating your character, and you can roll up at random what the character's motivations are. Maybe their temperament. If they have a quirk, what do they like? What do they dislike? It's not a huge backstory. It's just trying to get a bit of a personality. Because what I tell my players is, don't think of your character as simply numbers on the character sheet. Think of your character as a personality. You will play the personality of the character, not your personality, something else, something new. That's the essence of it. And it's hard for me to imagine a personality. I suppose you could say, well, he's like Two-Face in Batman lore. He lets the dice decide every time. But that to me is a very specific case. It's not perhaps portable to every character out there. Anyway.
Go and check out this gold shit now that all the people are gone and won't see me stealing anything, but yeah.
Very nice fruit looking like.
Gonna walk over,
Juicy.
grab the fruit, and just.
I'm gonna watch what happens.
Our exploratory eater. So you come over. Grumby is kind of hiding in the shadows watching this happen. And you take the fruit and bite it. As you do that, several things.
Kelsey, one of the very common things we do as game masters, which I wish we could root out of our practice, is the re-narration of what was perfectly clear as a narration by the player. I don't think you need to do it. It's very tempting to do, but as much as you can, don't re-narrate. They're doing that was fine. Doc did a fine job of describing moving himself as the character to another part in the world, taking something from another character, and then, as crazy as it may be to eat a strange fruit, he takes a bite of the fruit. Just go right to what happens next.
Happen. You hear a piercing wail emanate from the east side of the room as a mermaid kind of hauls herself onto the shore, and she's reaching out and going, no. When you see it, she has like bedraggled seaweed hair, and she's very jaundiced looking with sunken eyes and looks in some way ill. And she's reaching towards you saying, no, right as you take this bite. And I think then, Wibbly, let's have you do your best check ever. Actually, you know what? It's not a constitution check.
Yay!
It's a wisdom check as you bite into this fruit. It is possibly the most delicious thing you've ever tasted, especially coming off that intense hunger that you were just experiencing. Make me a DC 12 wisdom check.
No.
Ooh, okay, so all of you guys see Wibbly kind of collapse to the ground in a sort of
Do you hear it when you hear it now? The kinda, sorta. it takes your good descriptions and it waters them down.
Euphoria. So you're in this state of like angelic, warm, angelic chords coming from on high, and you feel very comfortable. And you're unconscious for a round, and unfortunately, you permanently lose 1 hit point.
He's dead. So then.
You die from this.
I mean, in terms of ways you're gonna go, in like pure absolute euphoria, is not too bad.
Our first death is, oh no, Wibbly of 1 hit point goes to the afterlife on the wings of this delectable fruit in the warm embrace of angelic song. Wibbly, it's dead.
Character death is an important part of the game, and if it's not part of the game, then what are the stakes again? I think that having character death as a possibility is good. My suggestion here, Kelsey, is when Doc announces that he dies, perhaps a better way of doing that would be to have the player describe what everyone else sees. Instead of saying you see, just describe. He chokes, color drains from his face, his eyes roll up into his head, his heart stops, and he falls to the ground. Or he falls to the ground and his heart stops. The fruit falls from his hand, like his lifeless hand. Then everyone's, oh, crap, he died. And then quickly just to the next player. Like, what do they do?
Or rather, well, normally you would be dying, but you permanently lost the only hit point that you had, so...
A levitating hammer appears in his place.
Memnon be praised. So thankfully Doc has some backup characters prepared, so we'll get one of those whipped up. All of you guys see Wibbly expire, and you think, that was strange.
So it's strange, just the description of it, and everyone seeing this, except for Natho. He's in a different room. He has no idea what's going on. I would avoid saying you think as much as you can. There are some cases where it becomes necessary, but I don't think you need to say it very much.
Last word would be, it's delicious.
Yes, those are his last words. Ah. And at the same time, the sort of mewling, howling mermaid is starting to drag herself towards you guys across the ground right here. Which brings us to Grumby, who is hidden and has witnessed a lot of things suddenly happen all at once. Grumby, what do you do?
I get the hell out of there.
See, already, Jesse, you're speaking in first person. I get out of there. What is that? What does it look like? Describe to us what it looks like. I rush out of the room, tearing away the cloth doorway. Terrified. That's fantastic. I've noticed this. You may have noticed this too. New players are more likely than not to react in what they consider to be a normal way. The more experienced players, those of us that have been in the hobby for a while, we kind of know the tropes, and we've played enough of these games that we're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's all right. It's just one of them we can easily take. New players see the world as they're just exploring it for the first time as one full of mystery and danger. And as much as we can, I think we should try to recapture that, all of us, even those that are very experienced in the hobby. Well, we've watched a turn from everyone, at least one turn. We've watched a character death. So I think it might be time to, just in the interest of keeping this brief, to perhaps call it there, Kelsey. And I hope that, I hope that these few tips and tricks that I've shared with you are of use to you in the future in your games. I hope that you'll do another one of these. I'd like to see another one, if possible, perhaps associated with your upcoming or your current Kickstarter. There's a lot of talk about Shadowdark, and I've tried to watch other Shadowdark games. I don't see a lot of in-character play in Shadowdark, and I think that's a shame. I don't see there's really anything inherent in the rule system that you've created that would prevent players from staying in character. The dice system isn't challenging. There's not a lot of mini games to play. It's fairly unified. There's some mechanics that could help with immersion. In fact, one of the highlights that is often, and I'm not sure that this is. It may be a little overstated, but I don't know. I'd have to try it out. Which is the real-time light source. And the advantage of a real-time light source is it would encourage in-character play to respect the time, right? Having 45-minute rounds in Shadowdark has a real impact because you have a 1 hour torch and then that's it. And when the torch goes out, bad things happen, is my understanding. I've talked to a few other participants in the hobby that really enjoy Shadowdark, and they have lots of good things to say about it. My hope is that it'll cause a bit of a excitement about the hobby. I'm always encouraging more people to try it, and I hope that it can be the type of game where participants can be in character, where roleplay can exist. This has been unsolicited advice for Kelsey, Dionne, and the Arcane Library. My name is Crispy, or at least that's what I go by, and I hope that this will have been useful for some of you that are excited about Shadowdark and have played it. By all means, check out the rest of this game session. The ending of this game session is really quite humorous. I liked it a lot. There's some excellent moves there, or an excellent turn at the very end. But I'll leave that for you to discover, and I'll provide a link in the description below to this particular game session. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.